Hey, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us again. We're here on site at Art of the Cowgirl, and I have the honor of sitting down with Kelsey Scott today, a rancher in South Dakota. Kelsey, thanks so much for taking some time before you start the long journey back home.
It's absolutely a pleasure. One of my favorite things about Art of the Cowgirl is coming together and getting to visit and network with all of the great stories that exist here. So it's great to be able to sit down for a quick visit before we head home.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Well, so my first question for you is, what is your relationship to land, and what has the journey been in developing that relationship?
Yeah, well, my earliest connection that I can recall to what I look back now on to being, on the land, when I was 5 years old, we moved into our new house and we had a crawl space dug out, and the pile of soil was sitting outside of the house. And I was an only child until I was 8 years old, and that was my playground. And I came home from school in kindergarten, and they had hauled the dirt away, and then my dirt pile was gone. And back then, I only referred to it as dirt pile because I didn't know the terminology between dirt and soil.
Nicole Masters would be happy now.
I do. And so it was, I look back and I'm like, wow, those are the first days of me becoming like a full-fledged plant and soil nerd, I just didn't know it. And they were like some of my happiest days, and I really think it's probably because I was just exposed to all of that soil microbiome that had just been broken up from the prairie. And but now I've learned that my connection with the land, I like to say that I'm a fourth generation rancher, but I'm of the 125th generation to get to steward the Great Plains. I feel very connected to the land because of the ancestors that it connects me to, and I view the land as a relative, and I know that she's the relative that's going to outlive us all, and she's going to help tell the stories across generations. And I just feel so fortunate that I get to experience that relationship with my family on our family ranch on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation.
So can you tell me a little more about the family ranch? What enterprises are you all running, and how does that look to be running a business or multiple businesses with your family?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I typically say we're a family operation, family first, no matter what, often to the detriment of the operation. But when people get exposed to our operation, they never walk away with an interpretation of it being to the detriment of the operation. It really is. You come once as, as strangers, you leave as friends, you come back again in your family. And, our annual gatherings for our brandings, they're, 150 people come from all over the place.
Who cooks?
Yeah, well, my Aunt Lori, she complains about it the whole time, but she loves it. She loves feeding people. Her Lakota name is actually She Who Feeds the People. And so my family operation, we have the third and fourth generation of my dad's family on the land. We have at certain points of the year when the college students are in college, we have about 21 residents on the ranch, 6 houses, and we're starting to become more diversified. Our goal, we have around 7,200 acres that we get to manage. And on that, we raise a Black Angus primarily based to our cow herd, cow-calf ranching operation, along with we're in the transition phase to slimming down our cow-calf operation to be able to retain 100% of our calf crop to have them ready for our grass-fed beef program. So we have the cow-calf operation, a haying operation for prairie hay. We also do the yearlings and stockers, and then we sell them to DX Beef LLC, which is our direct-to-consumer grass-fed beef business. We also have quite a bit of entrepreneurship that's present on the ranch. I own a custom beadwork business. My sister...
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Cool.
DX Designs.
Okay.
We have, my stepmother, she does photography and does some consulting work for different, marketing kind of packages for different businesses. My uncle does DX woodworking. He does very high quality furniture that he makes in his wood shop. And my adopted sister, she does a cinch business. So, and then on top of that, we have the family curse. We often joke about public servancy. We oftentimes forget to take care of ourselves because we just feel so compelled to try to take care of the community around us in whatever way we can. And so I have aunts that are doctors, nurses, and I have, uncles that work in the native governance realm. My father is the administrator for the Farm Service Agency. We have a really widespread talent base, I would call it, on the ranch. And for me, that's the family component of where we all exist on the operation. Yep. We're getting better. My brother is going to school for an ag economics degree, and I'm so excited to have somebody else that knows the importance of numbers to come back and to really breathe some of that into the operation. But to be able to carry that family component and to be considerate of the human resources that we have been able to embrace on the operation.
Yep. So if you don't mind, this conversation comes up a lot in agriculture right now. It comes up a lot within the women in ranching community. And it comes up for me when you talk about running numbers. As you all are looking to transition to a smaller cow herd so that you have the grass space to be feeding out grass-fed calves, would you mind explaining that a little bit for our listeners who might not understand, what's the difference between a commodity beef that I might go buy at the grocery store between what Kelsey Scott might be raising and selling? If you could just offer a little of the nuance and complexity of how that looks as an operator making that transition. And I would love to hear more about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I bought into the cattle business in 2017 when I moved home and started pursuing an online master's degree program. And my master's degree program was building out the business plan for DX Beef. And after owning cattle and calving them out as my own, bearing my brand for a year, I got to sale day and we loaded up the calves and we took them to the sale barn and we sold them across the scale at Faith Livestock, and they took such good care of us. I mean, for my first experience being a woman in the industry, they talked to me, they looked me in the eye, they saw me square as a producer, just as if I were a man, and I really appreciated that relationship they extended to me. And yeah, even with that experience, when my calves walked across the scale and they walked out the ring and they were no longer mine and I never knew where they were going, it was heartbreaking for me because I'd put so much energy into making sure that they had a quality life up until that point, and I no longer had any control over that. And so then on the drive home, we drove past dozens of homes that I know face food insecurity because on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation, we encompass Dewey and Ziebach County, two of the most food insecure counties in the entire country, which is pretty common for rural America to have food insecure communities so close to agriculture out there on the landscape, which is really frustrating when you think about it. But I thought, you know what, never again. Like, this isn't going to be our only marketing option. We've got to figure out how to close this circle and to help our community get closer to being more food secure. So I bit the bullet and we started DX Beef LLC. In 2018, we sold like 6 critters in the form of halves and wholes. 2019, we doubled to 12. And then I am one of those people who really likes to make myself miserable with goals that I'm locked into. And but it ended up working out really well for us to be able to fill a need by the community. When the pandemic hit, our grocery store shelves went empty. Within like a week of the pandemic of COVID-19 hitting the coastlines of the United States. That's how at the end of the food supply chain we are where I live. And so we had family members who were needing to buy food for their family for the next month, and it was their one trip to town for the month, and they got there and the store shelves were empty. And it just so turned out that DX Beef had planned to scale up our production. In 2020, we processed over 100 carcasses.
That's a huge scale
jump.
up.
Yeah.
From 12 to over 100.
12 to over 100 from 2019 to 2020.
Yeah.
And we started doing COVID-safe drop points. So we would have all of the product loaded up into our individual bags based on the orders. And then we had like little 5-minute slots when our customers would meet us at one common location. Sometimes we were meeting at the grocery store parking lot so they could pick up their beef.
Right.
And we would drop the tailgate down. I would get the beef out of the cooler. I would set it there in the insulated bag, wearing a mask, disinfecting my hands, and the customer would come up and pick it up off the tailgate. And what I've found is it wasn't necessarily that the customers that were now buying from me didn't want to buy local. They didn't know it was an option until they didn't have the convenience of stopping by the grocery store shelf to grab their burger to make tacos that night.
Right.
And so what I ended up being able to do is really just tell the story through all of that about the importance of knowing where your food is coming from all around. We're not to the point where we're 100% subsistent in our own vegetable production yet, but we sure would like to be able to get a greenhouse going and to get to where we're producing more of our greens and vegetables as well. But
which would be a whole nother enterprise.
Oh, it totally
potentially
would.
for a family member.
And then there's like honeybees, like I saw some phenomenal cattle dogs here today. We have cattle, but we're looking towards figuring out how to make our product available at as affordable of a rate as we can make in our community. Figuring out ways we can establish, that baseline in our sales to be able to maintain from one year to the next 100% of our calf crop at home. So originally we were running, around 280 cow-calf pairs. Our goal is to dial that back to around 130 of our very best producing mama cows, keeping 130 calves every year, and then knowing that we also have the 130 stockers from the year prior that we're getting closer to being able to finish and process.
So this is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's just a lack of knowledge about how long it takes, depending on your environment, to finish cattle. So in your environment, what is that time frame looking for you? So could you just kind of detail what is the calf's life cycle on the ranch?
Yeah. So what we're finding, and this is where we're getting into the stage of deciding what are our best reproducing moms as we see how their calves really do develop beyond weaning stage.
Right.
Some steers will be, ready for finish to be able to go to processing between the, 14 to 18 month time frame. The smaller framed ones, they may take to 24 to 26 months before it makes sense to use them in a slaughter space. And we're going through the growing pains on our own ranch of knowing that we do want to process our own animals. That, there's been some butcher slots I've had to fill with animals that I 100% didn't think were ready. They weren't like the prime choice, but based on trying to get our environment matched with the cattle and the age range and the butcher slots that we had scheduled, you just have to make those decisions and kind of feel your way through it. The important thing that I'm finding my customers are excited about, though, is they know their meat product that they're eating comes from one animal. They know that animal was raised on the very same soil biome that they, ate dirt from as kids. And they're seeing that in their home now. I have some parents who say, I hate to tell you this, my daughter wanted spaghetti and I was out of DX beef, so I bought a package of burger at the store, and she ate around the meat. She didn't like it anymore, I have another parent who said, we recently switched from a vacuum seal to a tube on one of our for the packaging. And she's like, I brought it home, and my son, I said, no, Mom, that's not DX beef. I don't want it. So it's exciting to know that there is a staple in people's homes. Like one of the things that I've found that I truly believe is, our food system's so broken that farmers and ranchers don't get the privilege and the humbling experience of saying they're feeding a community anymore. And that in and of itself is more powerful than any check you can cash at the bank or any award you can hang on your wall. To know that you have a family coming together, enjoying each other's company and nourishing their bodies with the food product that you helped to raise is so empowering as a producer.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And that leads right into the question of what, and you've already answered it to a degree, what is in this moment giving you hope for your community, for your family in South Dakota?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been really interesting because for the past year, it's been pretty easy to find things that would be the opposite of inspiring hope for you. But having the great honor of being able to fill a void that existed in my local food system has been, it is one of the greatest honors of my life to know that I've been able to help families not have to worry about if they're going to have access to healthy protein to feed their family. And I think that along with that, there's starting to become an even more informed consumer base all around the world that's asking those questions. What are we doing with our tax dollars to help those producers? How can I demand a more local food source? What are my kids getting fed at school? All of those questions are starting to become more at the forefront of conversation instead of just things that farmers and ranchers are complaining about on the tailgate after branding, which is great. And I think too, like this sort of stuff that I'm doing right now, it's giving me a lot of hope too, because we're able to connect with listeners in a way that we haven't been able to. Farming and ranching is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. And so it's really hard to make the time to connect with consumers, but we need to reconnect those conversations. And these projects, like what we get to enjoy right here, is a really big factor that gives me a lot of hope for what my kids are going to get to experience when they're a part of being in the farming and ranching community.
That's right. And do you have something exciting happening in a few weeks? Speaking of your kids.
So Monty and I are celebrating our wedding. We got married during COVID in May of 2020. We just went to the courthouse and made it official. We didn't know, there was a lot of unknown out there at the time. And we didn't want to have to hold off from entering into that next phase of our life or bring all of our family together to celebrate in such a scary time. And so we delayed our wedding, and now I get to go home and figure out how to pull it all off in the next couple of weeks. But it's been really an interesting experience, getting to have that connection with the land throughout the past year. Share it in a whole new way with my brother, who's, coming home more often to contribute to the family operation, having a husband to be able to make these management decisions with as well. I have some phenomenal ranching partners. Me and my husband both do on both sides of our family and our family operations. And, there's a lot of things going on out there, a lot of potential. And there's this excitement for young people to come back into the farming and ranching community. And, hats off to outfits like Art of the Cowgirl, because that's why it's happening. We're bringing together people to celebrate this way of life and to make sure that we continue to improve it for the next generation.
So at Western Landowners Alliance, we talk about this idea of stewardship and stewardship with vision. What does the word stewardship mean to you?
Yeah, stewardship for me is remembering that humans are a part of the system. And, we are just a biological species that exists in every ecosystem. Most often, we're some of the most extractive species in that ecosystem. But having that awareness and that consideration, it allows you to remember you have to take time to take care of yourself so you can better take care of the land. And you have to take care of the animals in a way that they take care of the people. It's connecting the food that's on our plates back to where it came from and telling that story and figuring out ways to make that story something every generation can be even more proud of. You know, we see so much wisdom with every generation that passes. You know, we see this little nugget of wisdom that can be lost, and we have to make the time to be good stewards of that wisdom and to carry it on and to learn from it and to apply it onto the landscape and to learn from the landscape too. You know, like I said, Mother Nature, she's the relative that will outlive us all, and just really making sure we've got a good relationship with her for ourselves is important too.
So I have to ask this one final question because, you know, how you've been telling your story, I'm really drawn to a curiosity of what this land you're describing looks like.
Yeah,
So would you mind, thank you for this time today, Kelsey.
absolutely.
And I'd like you to take our listeners on a journey through your eyes and your hands and your feet. What does that land look like and feel like?
Absolutely. So on Highway 212, driving through South Dakota between mile marker 200 and 199, you turn down BIA Road 8. And 9 miles down that gravel road that has more washboard than it does smooth spots and more gumbo than it has gravel, you will see some of the prettiest views. Off on the right-hand side, there is just a vast amount of prairie that seems to go on forever, right up until the point where the blue sky touches down onto the earth. And off to the left-hand side, you get to see the river shore banks of what's now Lake Oahe, a dam reservoir that flooded out my great-grandparents' homes down on the bottom with the Hoover Damming Project up and down the Missouri River. There's a lot of history there that if you don't have a trained eye, you don't know about because it's covered. And the closer you get to home, you know, the bigger your heart seems to swell. For us, Armstrong County is always the easiest hello and the hardest goodbye. And I think so much of it has to do with the beautiful landscape, the lush mixed northern mixed grass prairie grasses, the deep, rich gumbo soil, but also the stand the test of time family relationship that we have there at that ranch. You will feel welcome when you get there. It doesn't matter what time of the day, the coffee's always on. And you better believe there's going to be some sort of food cooked while you're there, and you're going to be expected to eat, no matter how many times you say you're not hungry. Yeah, that's a little bit of home for, you know, there's cattle and horses scattered all around, and on the good days, in the summertime and on the weekends, you've got kids running around outside playing too, reminding you what it's like to have that imagination and creativity as a staple in your life.
Well, I'm not sure about everyone else, but I would maybe sneak into the back of Kelsey's truck today. Now I'd really like to be there. Thank you, Kelsey, for sharing the story of your land and your family and communicating with all of us today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And if you are interested in coming, one of the enterprises I didn't mention is we do offer ranch vacations.
Hey,
So
there you go.
It's a vacation. You will be able to relax and recharge quite a bit, but it's a ranch vacation, so you do get to get right out in there and work with us.
So if someone is interested, how can they look up your info?
Absolutely. You can learn more specifically about the ranch vacationing and all of our clinics that we host on the ranch at www.dxranch.com. TheDXRanch.com. Sorry.
TheDXRanch.com.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.